After I lost my husband soon after our wedding, I raised Rick by myself. One day, Rick introduced me to his fiancée, Molly. In front of Rick, she acts sweet, but when we're alone, she looks down on me and does whatever she wants. Despite my worries about letting Rick marry her, we reached the day where both families would meet. When we met Molly and her parents in a private room at the restaurant, for some reason, they smirked at me. Even after waiting a while, my appetizers still hadn't arrived. Molly's mother said to me, "You don't get one." "What, poor people can't appreciate the taste of a nice steak?" Exactly. If we let someone with just a high school diploma lead here, it'll ruin the place's reputation. Molly and her parents grinned with a crude smile. "Now let's see, Rick. Time to feast with your new family." Rick sighed and said, "Mom, let's go home." Seeing Rick's sad expression, I clenched my fists on my lap. I would never forgive them. If they fought, I'd stay quiet forever. They were gravely mistaken. I'm Susan, a 50-year-old housewife. I've been raising my son Rick by myself after my husband suddenly passed away from illness in the 4th year of our marriage. My parents are still alive, but live in a rural area and are currently living with my younger brother's family, so I can't easily rely on them. After graduating high school, I worked a series of part-time jobs. At the time, my parents were worried about me, so I've avoided depending on them ever since. My husband's parents live nearby, but they're elderly, so it's tough to lean on them. I paid off the mortgage with my husband's life insurance, but also needed to save for Rick's education and my retirement. To support our 2-person household, I threw myself into my work. Seeing me work so hard, Rick grew up to be an honest and kind kid. He eventually got a job and brought his fiancée home, but my joy over this sweet girl was short-lived. His fiancée and her parents were quite the characters. She's beautiful, capable, and a wonderful person. Kind and reliable, too. We work on the same team at the office, and she's helped me a lot. "I want to introduce my fiancée to you," Rick said, blushing at my question about what kind of person she was. With such high praise, my expectations soared. When we finally met, she turned out to be the sweet, demure girl Rick would like. Pleased to meet you. I'm Molly Kennedy," she said, gracefully bowing her head. Her pink floral dress suited her translucent voice and fair skin. She brought a fruitcake from an upscale pastry shop as a gift. "Oh, I also made one. Looks like we picked the same thing." When I offered Molly some banana cake and tea on the living room sofa, she raised an eyebrow slightly. "It's fine, I love it," Rick said with a smile, urging Molly next to him. "Mom makes great cake." "Susan, are you good at cooking?" "I only do baked cakes," I corrected her with a laugh. "It's refreshing to bake between work. It's fun." Molly squinted. After sharing stories about how they met at work, Molly looked around the room and brightly remarked, "Still, Rick's house is so compact. It's small, right? And the yard isn't big either." Rick said with a carefree laugh, "Mom, Molly's family home is a 6-bedroom mansion with a 700 SQM lot and parking for 5 cars. The yard is like a park, spacious and beautiful." "Well, that's impressive," I responded with an exclamation. "But if I'm living alone, this size is just right for me." "True. It's a hassle hiring a housekeeper." I had a question for her. "Is your father the president of the Kennedy Group, a restaurant chain?" Molly's expression brightened. "Yes, my mother's father was the original president, and my dad took over after him. You know a lot." "I used to work there part-time years ago." "Oh, I see." Molly gave a knowing smile. "You're the daughter of a company president, Molly?" "Oh no, it's not such a big deal," she demurred, waving her hand modestly. "I went to the same prestigious girls' school as my mom, from middle school to college. So, when I joined the workforce, I had a hard time getting used to men." Molly's shy smile and gentle speech exuded elegance. She had that vibe of being a well-bred young lady. Does that mean they expect Rick to join their family? While I was pondering that, Rick's phone rang. After checking the caller, he apologized and picked up. Sorry, but I'm in the middle of a family meeting. Talking about work? What? Rick's face went pale. I see. Okay, I'll be right there. He hung up and apologized to us. Sorry, it looks like a coworker messed up a deal. Molly, I'll stop by the office and then come right back. So can you wait here? Molly was momentarily taken aback, but quickly put on a smile. Got it. Don't worry about me. Thanks. I'll be back soon, Mom. With his work bag in hand, Rick left the house, leaving Molly and me to share a vague smile. Spending time alone with someone I just met was awkward, especially given our roles as future mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. As I stood there unsure, Molly stood up, picked up the tray of tea and cake. Where do you throw away food scraps? The trash can is in the corner of the kitchen, I replied, ignoring my puzzled expression. She hurried to the kitchen. Growing suspicious, I followed her, only to see her toss my homemade cake into the trash. Molly emptied the tea into the sink and clattered the empty dishes onto the countertop. When I was taken aback, she said in a cold voice like a different person, "This disgusting stuff makes me sick. Homemade cake is revolting." She glanced at the tea packages through the glass-covered door and sneered, "Unlike you commoners, I only drink the kind of tea served to the British royal family. This cramped house is already suffocating, and with this kind of food, I could vomit." Leaving me standing in the kitchen, she stormed back to the living room. I followed her, still shocked, and saw her snapping photos of my home's interior with her phone and sending them to her parents. "See, my mom and dad are laughing too. Look." She showed me her phone, and I couldn't believe my eyes at the messages. The taste of this commoner's home is hilarious. People actually live in a house this small? Amazing. Can I take a picture of the garden? Must be easy to maintain since you don't need a gardener. I'm so jealous. Until Rick returned home later, Molly continued to ridicule our way of life. I realized she despised me, looking down on me for being common. Despite her mockery of my home, she genuinely seemed to want to marry Rick, often asking me questions. I want to buy Rick a watch as his birthday gift. Does he have a preferred brand? What foods does Rick dislike? We're going out for a picnic this weekend. While I was appalled by her nerve, I answered her kindly each time, not wanting to create tension between her and Rick. One day, Molly called me. "Rick's been asked to organize his high school reunion. He wanted to check his yearbook at your place, but he just got a sudden business trip, so I'll come to get it for him." Dreading her visit, I reluctantly agreed. To avoid any complaints, I prepared premium tea and cookies from a traditional brand, but to my surprise, Molly brought her mother along. "Nice to meet you. I'm Karen, Molly's mother." With her permed long hair and strong perfume, Karen was heavily made up and looked much younger than her age. "Molly, why did you bring your mother?" I asked curiously. "Mom wanted to see us moral commoners' house. Sorry for dropping by like this," Karen said with a grin. "Your house has 4 bedrooms, right? All my friends live in luxury high-rise apartments and upscale neighborhoods. When Molly told me about your place, I got curious and wanted to see it with my own eyes." I was speechless at their rude remarks, while Molly listened with a smile beside her mom. What do these two think other people's homes are for? That pissed me off, but I couldn't be bothered to refuse them. I reluctantly invited them in. Sure enough, Molly and Karen raged through the house, barely focusing on their original purpose. Without my permission, they opened the bathroom, toilet, and hallway closets, gasping with amazement. "Oh my, this bath doesn't even have a jacuzzi, and it's so tiny. You can't possibly relax in here," Karen said. "It's okay for me." I forced a smile despite my twitching cheeks. "This garden is smaller than our entrance hall. Is there any point to it? If it's too big, it's hard to manage." "Oh, you can't afford a gardener, right?" then it can't be helped. After criticizing my house from every angle, Molly and Karen sat in the living room, enjoying tea and cookies while chatting. I was horrified, thinking Rick grew up in a dump, but it's better than I expected, Molly said. But isn't it still cramped? Karen chided Molly's protests. Well, calling it a kennel is too harsh. Our Carlo's room is 20 square meters. Barely containing my anger at their insults, I watched the two finish their tea and stand up, smiling at me. Thanks for letting us see something unusual. We had fun. It was a good way to kill some time, wasn't it, Mom? I could never live here, but coming by sometimes would be all right, Molly added. I'd never want to live with a daughter-in-law like you either, I thought, but swallowed my words and mustered a fake smile. I'm glad you liked it. Don't forget Rick's yearbook. I got it right here. Molly held up the yearbook she took from Rick's shelf and left with Karen. After they left, I sank into the sofa, exhausted. The fatigue washed over me all at once. Rick's simple nature probably meant he was completely fooled by Molly's sweet act. Is he really going to be all right marrying her? Worry flooded my mind, but thinking of how hurt Rick would be if he discovered her true nature, I hesitated to speak up. Time passed by. One day, Rick contacted me. We want to have the families meet at the end of the month. Does that work for you, Mom? I'm free on weekends, so whenever is fine. Feeling curious, I asked, You've already met Molly's mother, right? Yeah, she's bright and pleasant. I see. It seemed they were both putting on an act around Rick. After hanging up, Rick sent the date and name of the upscale restaurant along with a photo. I booked a salon appointment and decided to wear a new suit. But as the day approached, my anxiety grew. Is it really okay to let my precious son marry someone like her? Her mother belittled me too, and her father is likely similar. To ease my concerns, I devised a plan. On the day of the family meeting, Rick and I arrived at the restaurant. Molly was waiting at the entrance with her parents. At first glance, Molly seemed like a refined young lady. Karen, with her perfect makeup, also radiated an air of elegance. Her father, whom I was meeting for the first time, Michael, was a tall man with handsome features. As he greeted Rick and me with a smile, I couldn't help but feel that he too looked down on me inside. Led by the waitress, we moved to a private room suitable for a pre-marriage meeting, full of ambiance and overlooking a garden in the backyard. The meeting started off pleasantly under Michael's lead, but I soon felt uncomfortable as Rick began introducing us. Molly, Michael, and Karen continuously interrupted him. My mother lost my father after 4 years of marriage and raised me on her own. Such a boring story. Who cares? Look at this instead, Mom, Molly interrupted, flaunting her engagement ring to Karen and Michael. They both burst into excitement. No, that's the designer brand Molly loves for her engagement ring. Molly is so lucky. Michael, crossing his arms, bragged as if it was his own achievement. I heard Rick was a rising star when I did business with his company. He's a senior manager at such a young age, isn't he? I'm proud of him. Oh, it was just that a recent project went well. And that was thanks to the advice I got from my mom, as Rick modestly deflected. Karen leaned in. Among all the young employees at headquarters, he stands out, head above the rest, doesn't he? Straight on the elite track, Molly said. You've snagged a good one, right? Graduated straight from that prestigious university. Rick is definitely a match for me. A president's daughter, Michael, laughing heartily, slung an arm around a bewildered Rick. I could leave my legacy to a man like you. How about becoming my family, Rick Kennedy? That sounds cool, much better than Rick Murphy. It's several times more appealing. It's like he's my own son. I've always wanted a handsome and competent son. Molly and her parents were getting excited as if I wasn't even there. Is there any point in me being here? Then the food arrived. I was briefly relieved that I was a little distracted, but it was short-lived. The appetizers were served only in front of Molly, her parents, and Rick. Then, as the courses continued, including the main course of steak, the space in front of me remained conspicuously empty. "Well, is my meal coming?" I asked the waitress, who awkwardly avoided eye contact and quickly retreated when I looked puzzled. "You don't have a serving," Karen declared. "What? We only ordered for 4, and a person like you wouldn't appreciate the taste of an expensive steak," she said with a composed face. "That's right. If we let someone with just a high school education eat here, it would lower the restaurant's standards." Molly and Michael shook with laughter. "Come on, Rick, let's eat. It's a feast with your new family." Rick, his face tense, sighed deeply and said, "Mom, let's go home." "Oh no, Rick, you can't do that. You're the main event here," Karen protested, trying to stop him as he stood up. "The only one who should leave is the high school grad over there." "That's right. She'll ruin the taste of the food." I clenched my fists in my lap. I couldn't stand it any longer. The time has come, and I'll throw out all the facts I have. They were wrong if they thought I would always stay quiet. I looked at Rick, pleading with my eyes. He nodded silently. Secretly, I gripped the voice recorder I had pulled from my bag on our way to the restaurant. I had confided to Rick in the car about everything Molly and Karen had done to me. Karen looked relieved when Rick sat down again. "Rick, you're not leaving. That's good. After all, you're going to be my son," Molly complained as Karen tried to hug Rick. "It's okay, Molly. Karen has other favorites anyway," I said, managing a smile, which made Karen visibly stiffen. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, you know what I mean, don't you?" I placed the voice recorder on the table and pressed play in front of them. Suddenly, loud music, inappropriate for the upscale restaurant, started playing, accompanied by cheers. "Don't look at other women. Hey, you don't make eyes at Luke. He's mine." Indeed, this was audio I had obtained from a male host bar. I continued to play the audio next to Karen, who went pale. "Karen, you've had a bit too much to drink, haven't you? And about the bill, are you sure it's the 4th champagne tower this month, isn't it?" "I'm happy, but it's fine. I'll have my nephew pick me up. He's the head of accounting, so he'll cover this month's payment under entertainment expenses. It's good to have at least one obedient employee." Even if she was drunk, the carelessness of discussing such matters publicly was staggering. Does obsession with a host cloud judgment this much? "For your birthday next month, I'll buy you an Italian suit and a Swiss luxury watch, so we should go on another date outside the bar." Karen's sugary speech was sickening. "Luke?" The host sounded puzzled. "I don't mind the date, but you've been giving me gifts almost every week. Are you sure that's okay?" "Don't worry about it, my Luke," her childish tone persisted. "I'm the vice president of Kennedy Group. I can spend as much money as I want. I got that company from my father." Michael's cheeks twitched visibly. His polite smile had vanished, replaced by a look of anger. "The president is my husband, but he joined my family when we got married. That means the company's money is essentially mine. No one can complain," Karen stated confidently. "That's so—" "Oh, your nephew is here," Rel said, evident in Luke's voice. "I'm sorry for always causing trouble, Auntie Karen. We should go now," Luke interjected. I turned off the voice recorder at this point. "What the hell is this?" Michael asked in a low, angry voice. "You've been going to the male host bar at 60? You're a disgrace." Karen snapped back immediately. "I'm only 58. A little fun should be fine," Karen retorted. "And why do you have such a recording?" Karen turned her anger toward me, but Rick responded calmly. "Luke is the son of a mother's acquaintance," Rick explained. "What?" Karen's eyes widened. "I heard from an acquaintance before. They mentioned a problematic older customer who demanded returns for gifts. It was hard to say no. Recently, I learned it was Molly's mom, so I asked Luke to record their conversations." I was planning to let Molly hear them to persuade her to stop, Rick continued. Michael's face turned crimson up to his neck, furiously berating Karen. If the media catches wind of this, we'll be a laughingstock. Think about your age for once, Michael scolded. Karen twisted her lips into a sneer. You think I don't know? You do as you please, Karen retorted. Michael's cheeks contorted in anger. Don't act dumb. You're buying an apartment for a hostess and covering her living expenses, right? Karen pulled out her phone. And not just Michael and Molly, but I also peered in. Your husband wants to divorce you and remarry me, Karen revealed, showing a provocative message along with a photo of a man and woman lying together in bed. When I had it checked, you're pretending to work but spending half the week at that apartment, right? And lying about playing golf on weekends to go on trips with this woman? Karen's accusations cut through the tension like a knife. Don't joke around, she shouted, hurling her phone into a corner of the room. What a cocky bar girl! If you have money to play around with, you should give me more. Who do you think got you to where you are now? You're always so noisy, Michael bellowed back. You keep mocking me for being a son-in-law. It's not thanks to you. It's your father who's the significant figure. Just because you were born into money doesn't mean you can strut around. It's disgraceful, Michael argued fiercely. The noise was likely audible outside the room. A waitress peered in through a slightly open door, then quickly withdrew, perhaps deciding it was best not to escalate the disturbance. The four's premium steaks on the table cooled down. Sorry, Rick, Molly said. Shoulders slumped as her parents argued. My parents are like this, but my feelings for you are real. She gently took Rick's hand, looked up at him with moist eyes, and pleaded in a sweet voice. Please marry me. Rick smiled ruefully, looking troubled. Well, I'm sorry, but I refuse. Molly's eyes widened in disbelief. Why? She asked. Because you don't really love me, do you? Rick wore a self-deprecating smile. No, Rick. Do you want me to say I love you in front of everyone? Molly questioned, her heart sinking. Oh, you're so cute, Rick firmly told her. You were flirting with 20 younger coworkers from different departments, right? Molly's complexion changed as Rick played a recording from his phone. Both parents momentarily paused their argument to watch the unfolding drama. Yes, during overtime, Molly kept persistently approaching me, Rick confessed. But when I said I had a girlfriend, she snapped back. She said, I'm the better woman, choose me. She invited me on an overnight trip. You're engaged to Rick, right? I asked, and she said, a little cheating is fine. She yelled at me when I mentioned alternating baby care shifts with my wife. She suggested an affair as a change of pace. I don't understand as testimony after testimony emerged. Molly froze. I told them to keep quiet, she muttered resentfully. They went and consulted Rick anyway. After a moment of silence, Molly continued. Just the other day, I heard from a supervisor that coworkers were struggling to talk to me about it. That's why I spoke to them personally and decided to confront you with recordings. Rick continued in a calm tone, providing clarity amidst the chaos. Molly, when I first joined the company, you seemed indifferent to me. But a year ago, you invited me to dinner, and since then, you've been coming on strong. I was glad, but something fell off. That's because I suddenly fell in love with you. That's how love works, right? You were interested in my title, weren't you? He said, smiling sadly. Even after hearing the testimony, part of me wanted to believe in you, Molly. But today, after seeing how you treated my mom, my feelings are completely gone, Rick stated firmly. Seeing Molly panic, her parents lamented loudly. You're hopeless. Rick Murphy is a promising candidate, and marrying him would benefit our company. We told you to win him over, but Rick is too serious. So boring, Molly pouted. I'm cute, so I can have a little fun, right? Then go to a host bar. The people at work would find out immediately. Their off-track conversation made me press my temples. The whole family is just awful, I thought, as Rick and I remained silent. Michael arrogantly asked, "You're not saying you want to cancel the wedding, are you?" Karen also looked at Rick with a serious expression and tried to convince him, "If you marry Molly, not only will you inherit our group, but we plan to involve you in new overseas projects. You're highly regarded at headquarters, right? This is a done deal. Rick is smart enough not to ruin such a good match." Molly was desperately trying to get Rick's attention. "I'm offering to entrust my father's important company to you, a complete stranger. Don't you see how honorable that is?" Rick and I exchanged glances and shrugged. "Your behavior so far doesn't show that you care about the company," Rick pointed out. "What do you mean?" Karen snapped back. "Put your hand on your heart, or rather, this will make it clearer." I placed a voice recorder on the table and played the continuation of the conversation from the host bar that had been interrupted. "Auntie Karen, let's stop coming here for a while," Molly's voice pleaded. "No, I don't want Luke to be taken by another woman," Karen's voice replied anxiously. "You can't. The director is getting suspicious." The chief accountant spoke in a weak voice. "If it's discovered that you're embezzling company funds, you'll be dismissed as vice president. I'll lose my job for letting it slide too," he continued. "Don't worry. All of our board members are idiots. They won't notice," Karen assured. "Did you embezzle company funds?" Michael glared at Karen with an intense expression. Even she was now pale. Molly looked at her mom in disbelief. Karen opened and closed her mouth several times before glaring at me, shouting angrily, "This conversation was in the car on the way back, right? How did you get this?" "The chief accountant recorded it on his phone," I revealed. Karen blinked in shock. "You knew? My nephew?" she gasped. "It wasn't the chief accountant, but another executive I met through work," I clarified. A while back, he looked troubled, so I asked him what was wrong. He confided about the embezzlement issue he had learned from the chief accountant. Did he reveal it himself? So his sudden resignation wasn't for health reasons? Karen's eyes widened in shock. "He couldn't bear the guilt any longer. Once the evidence is all lined up, you'll be ousted as vice president as well," I continued, watching as Karen gritted her teeth in frustration while Michael and Molly looked on with sullen expressions. "Using company money for your escapades at the male horse bar, you foolish woman," Michael exclaimed. "Mom, that's the first. It will eventually be my company," Molly interjected. "Enough from both of you," Karen snapped back. "If you had let me spend freely, I would have managed within my allowance. I'm not to blame here. It's your fault," she accused, turning to glare at Molly. "It's because Molly is so foolish that we even had to consider bringing in a son-in-law. If we left it up to her, she'd run the company into the ground in no time," Karen continued. "That's awful, Mom," I said, drawing their attention. "Molly's involvement in the company wasn't to gain work experience, but to snag a husband." "And what's wrong with that? A low-educated person like you wouldn't understand our struggles," Molly replied with a smile. "Well, I wouldn't know about that. Things will probably get a lot tougher for you, but do try your best. I imagine the company will collapse now that I've pulled out," I said calmly. "How dare you act all high and mighty? Who do you think you are?" Karen exploded in anger. "Don't worry about us. We have renowned investors backing us," I replied. Rick then spoke to me softly. "When you took over the company from the previous generation, my mom wondered if the second generation would be okay. She decided to watch over things." "That's right," I said. "I thought we'd see how things went, but it didn't even last 10 years. Looking over at Molly and her parents, I stated firmly, "Today's meeting was the last. I'm pulling out." "What are you talking about?" "It's about my mom's work," Molly interrupted me. The trio gasped, sharing a look of disbelief. "Impossible. A high school grad, a poor person couldn't possibly manage a career that requires intellect, Molly's parents exclaimed. Too bad for you. I didn't go to college, but I paved my own way with the efforts I made afterward, I said sharply. I saved up money from part-time jobs to study asset management. Now, I also create content about financial management and have published manuals. I operate under a channel name, so except for my subscribers, no one knows my face. As I showed them my mobile videos, Molly and her parents stared at my face as if seeing it for the first time. It can't be true. You've ridiculed me enough, but I've been living a far more decent life than any of you, I said with a smile. The three of them shrank back, their faces filled with embarrassment. Let's go home, Rick. Wait, Molly called out, stopping us. Her parents quickly seized the opportunity to apologize. We truly regret our many inappropriate comments. Rick, please reconsider, Molly pleaded, clinging to Rick's arm with desperate sweetness in her voice. I'll even break it off with the person I'm currently seeing on the side. Please. You're cheating on me. Rick half left, clearly moved by Molly's display of affection. Her parents joined in her plea. Please, give us another chance to make things right. Let's have another meeting. I refuse, Rick stated coldly. I won't demand any compensation for this broken engagement, but let's not meet again. Please don't even speak to me at work. But suddenly Karen stood up, her face contorted with fury as she berated Rick. How dare you, the son of a poor man, refuse an engagement like it's beneath you? You should be grateful for the attention. Hey, stop. Michael tried to intervene, but Karen brushed him off, raising her voice even louder. Being married to my daughter would elevate you. You could have been the manager of our main store and contributed to our company. Please stop it, Mom. That's enough. A waitress approached amidst the commotion, her expression grim. Please, could you keep it down? You're disturbing the other customers. How dare you speak to me like that? Who do you think you are to order me around? Karen shouted back at the waitress, who quickly retreated. As we tried to calm Karen, police officers arrived. You're under arrest for causing a disturbance. What? I haven't done anything. 2 policemen seized a violent Karen and took her out of the crowded store and to a police car. Michael and Molly went to the police station for questioning while we left the restaurant, apologizing to the staff for the unpleasant scene. Karen was only reprimanded by the restaurant due to it being her first offense. However, the incident was widely reported online, exposing her embezzlement and extravagant spending at host bars. The resulting public backlash led to a significant drop in customers, forcing many of the company's restaurants to close. 6 months later, the company declared bankruptcy. Currently, Michael and his relatives are scrambling to secure funds for a potential recovery. Karen has lost trust among her family and faced a divorce from Michael. Although she received half of their assets, she had to use them to repay the embezzled funds, leaving her without any disposable income. Forbidden from visiting host bars and unable to maintain her lavish lifestyle, Karen has aged significantly. She now lives with Molly in an apartment, and their relationship has deteriorated into constant quarrels. Molly, after being reprimanded by her boss for aggressively pursuing multiple colleagues, submitted her resignation. Struggling to find a steady job, her reputation often precedes her, making it difficult to maintain employment. Meanwhile, Rick has moved on from the ordeal. Valued by his superiors and beloved by colleagues, he's thriving in his career, taking on significant projects and progressing well on his professional path. As a mother, my primary concern is for Rick's well-being. I hope he takes care not to overwork himself. Now, I optimistically wait for the day when Rick introduces a genuinely kind and beautiful young woman, both inside and